All right, let's talk about the U.S. Constitution, but maybe not in the way you're used to. We're going to look at it less like a piece of soaring poetry and more like a brilliant piece of engineering. It's really a machine, and it's built on a foundation that might surprise you: total and complete distrust.
And this quote right here, it really gets to the heart of the whole thing. See, to even begin to understand the Constitution, you have to start with the failures it was designed to prevent. This is a document that took a long, hard look at everything that had gone wrong and basically said, never again.
So yeah, our first big idea is this confession of failure. The framers weren't patting themselves on the back. They weren't taking a victory lap. They were writing a defensive playbook, a strategy guide against the absolute worst parts of human nature and political power.
You have to remember, these guys were realists. I mean, serious realists. They had a front row seat to see unstructured, do-whatever-you-want freedom totally fail. They'd also seen concentrated power every single time curdle into tyranny. So they accepted a tough truth. People, even good people with good intentions, will eventually betray the systems they create. That means the entire government had to be designed for flawed human beings, not some imaginary perfect angels.
And that's exactly why its language feels so cautious, so defensive. This document isn't a utopian fantasy about how great people can be. No, it's a practical framework. It's built to withstand the real-world pressures and the totally predictable weaknesses of human nature. Its strength, believe it or not, comes from expecting the worst.
This brings us to the two giant, failed experiments the framers had personally lived through. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to find this incredibly narrow path, right between an all-powerful king on one side and total societal collapse on the other. Okay, so failure number one was tyranny. This was fresh in their minds. They had just fought a war to get out from under a king whose power came from his bloodline. Under him, they were subjects, not citizens. So that famous phrase, "we the people," that wasn't just some nice-sounding fluff. It was a radical, in-your-face rejection of that entire model. It was a declaration that from now on, power flows from the people themselves.
But here's the twist. They'd also just lived through the exact opposite failure. After the revolution, their first shot at a government was something called the Articles of Confederation, and it created a system of, well, extreme freedom. Each state was basically its own little country, and the result wasn't liberty, it was absolute chaos. The Constitution was the answer to that problem, providing the structure and order they desperately needed.
And I'm not talking about abstract chaos, I mean real, tangible problems. Under the Articles, the central government was so weak it couldn't do anything. It couldn't tax, so the soldiers who won the war went unpaid. There was no president, no national court system. States were printing their own money, which was worthless everywhere else. Trade just completely collapsed. The framers learned a huge lesson here. Absolute freedom just ends up destroying itself. Chaos, they realized, is just another flavor of injustice.
So what do? What was the big solution? They decided to build a machine. A practical mechanical system designed specifically to manage conflict, to take all that human ambition and channel it in a way that wouldn't lead them right back to tyranny or chaos.
Before they wrote a single inspiring word about rights or freedoms, the framers built the core machinery. And this right here is the heart of the whole experiment. 3 distinct branches, each with its own job, and this brilliant idea of separation of powers to make absolutely sure no single part could ever get powerful enough to take over.
I absolutely love this quote because it nails the concept. This thing is a functional design. The branches of government are like big interlocking gears. They're designed to grind against each other, to create friction, to slow things down. And that friction, that's not a bug, it's a feature. It's the whole point. It's what stops any one part of the machine from just spinning wildly out of control.
Okay, so let's look at the first and, frankly, the biggest gear in this whole machine, Article 1, which creates Congress. The fact that they put the legislative branch first tells you everything you need to know about what these guys were most afraid of.
Seriously, think about that for a second. Why would you build a new government and give power first to the part that is designed to be inefficient and full of arguments? It seems totally backward, right? Well, it's because the framers weren't afraid of slow government. They were terrified of fast government. They feared a single decisive leader making quick, unchecked decisions. Just like a king.
So Congress is, by its very design, meant to be deliberate, not efficient. All the things we complain about today, the messiness, the public arguments, the agonizingly slow pace, those aren't flaws in the system. They are the central features of the system.
The framers believed that real, legitimate law had to come from open, messy debate, not from a quiet order whispered by one person.
And they didn't stop there. Even inside Congress, they built more gears. You've got the House of Representatives, with its short 2-year terms. It's designed to be the reactive, passionate, emotional voice of the people at any given moment. Then you have the Senate, with its long 6-year terms, designed to be the exact opposite, a source of stability, a cooling saucer, meant to resist sudden popular whims. For any law to actually pass, both of these clashing, competing perspectives have to find a way to agree.
And get this, even this incredibly powerful lawmaking body is put in a cage. Article 1 is full of things Congress is specifically told it cannot do. It can't punish people without a trial, it can't grant titles of nobility, things like that. The whole system is built on the word no. It's a constant, powerful check on power.
So the takeaway here is crucial. The core philosophy of Article 1 is that law must be forged in the fire of public argument. The framers didn't trust any single personality, no matter how brilliant or how virtuous they seemed. They only trusted the process.
And that brings us to what might be the most brilliant feature in the entire Constitution. The framers were smart, but they weren't arrogant. They knew they weren't perfect. They knew they would make mistakes. So they built a machine that could be repaired and even upgraded over time.
The greatest proof of this? The Bill of Rights. Now, you might think its absence from the original document was a huge oversight, but it wasn't. It was the result of a fierce debate, and the solution they came up with was genius. They said, look, let's ratify the Constitution first and then immediately use the amendment process that's already in the Constitution to add the protections for individual rights that everyone wants. The system fixed itself, exactly as it was designed to do. And this really is the fundamental promise of the whole thing. The Constitution never, ever claims to be perfect. What it offers instead is a durable, reliable process for correction. It's basically an admission that, yeah, we're going to get things wrong, but it also gives us the tools to make them right.
Which all brings us to this really critical question. Today, when new citizens take an oath of allegiance, what are they actually pledging loyalty to? It's not to a person, not to a king, not even to a piece of land. It's an oath to this ongoing, messy, imperfect experiment in self-government.
And in the end, that's what we the people really means. It's not just a statement, it's a commitment. It's an understanding that this system, this whole machine, expects us to fail sometimes, but it is built on this profoundly hopeful promise that we have the power, and more importantly, the responsibility to fix it together.